I am calling to order the meeting of the Norton Charter Commission on Monday, October 5th. All members are present with the exception of Kevin Schleicher Jr., who let me know earlier this afternoon he was probably going to be unavailable. I can reach him by phone if needed. And we are waiting on Denise Luciano at this point, but she should be attending shortly. And let's see, call to order. Let's review the meeting minutes of the last meeting, September 21st. Denise is in the waiting room. We are all set. Upon review, if everybody is satisfied with the minutes Sandy distributed yesterday for the meeting of the 21st, I will accept a motion to accept those meeting minutes.
So moved.
Could I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. No further discussion? Okay. Janie?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Dave Heaney?
Yes.
David Wren?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
Denise?
Yes.
I am also a yes. The minutes of Monday, September 21st are accepted. Okay, moving on. Time for public comment. We do have, I see at least one member of the public present at the moment. Would anybody like to speak at this time?
Is this the time to this is Oren Siegel. Is this time to speak up? Is anybody else from the public that's on that wants to talk? Ask some questions? Am I the only one?
Right now, it looks like you're the only one, and this is the correct time. So,
okay. Well, okay. First, let me thank the commission. I really appreciate all the work that's gone into it. And in one respect, I need to apologize in that I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and it's really just, I'm sorry I wasn't able to be more involved in following what you were doing, and probably those answers, I'm sure you've addressed them, but I think I'd like to be able to know the answers, so if other people, particularly my community, ask me questions about it, I can give them some response. There's three areas that I'd like to get some just clarification on. The first one is the election of the town council itself. You've listed as an at-large election, and I was wondering what consideration you went into making the decision to go with an at-large election of those council members.
Okay. I'm going to preface this by saying that discussion was the literally most widely discussed issue that we talked about, far more than even just switching to a town council form of government. To be fair to everybody, because everybody had very, very good points, I would like to, if you don't mind, point you to the exact points in meetings in which they were discussed. They were also reviewed just this past meeting, the 21st, in which we spent probably another half an hour to 45 minutes rehashing some of those points and discussing them again very much in depth. We heard from quite a few members of the community, so in the essence of time, for one, and in the spirit of fairness, I'm going to refer you, if you want to just take a minute to note down these particular meeting dates, and I'm going to give you the exact timestamp within those meetings. The culmination of those discussions probably exceeded 3 to 4 hours in total.
Oh.
Yeah. I am not exaggerating when I say it was the most widely deliberated and for the longest length of time deliberation that we ensued. So January 13th of this year, if you start at the 42-minute 50-second mark, That was our first discussion, our first serious discussion. You may also want to refer to the minutes of that meeting. There was a good list of pros and cons that were detailed there. The next meeting was January 27th, our next meeting following that, and that discussion started at the 12-minute and 53-second mark. And then I would refer you to the meeting of September 21st, and it was probably, I don't know the exact minute time, but it was one of the items that we discussed early on, probably right after public comment. So we started 10 or 15 minutes into that meeting. There was another discussion that went on from 30 to 40 minutes there.
Okay. And the ultimate vote on going with it, that was what?
We decided to, as it is in the preliminary charter, the majority vote was for at-large town council members. And that was a split vote. Initially, we were split 5-4. And when we discussed it again at the last meeting, we had a bit of a debate and discussed whether we wanted to open that question up for reconsideration and another vote. Once we had finalized discussions in the last meeting, it was determined nobody wanted to make a motion to reconsider that.
Okay. And was there more than one other alternative, or there's just one other basic alternative that was being considered? We
had talked about a few things. There were compromises that were raised. I don't want to get into the full details. Unfortunately, everything is very interrelated, so some of the decisions earlier and later in the process influenced whether or not we could offer a compromise scenario.
Okay. Not having reviewed that, my own sense going into this, just so if this is public comment, my own consideration was leaning toward one more of a representative type of scenario. I don't know what the alternatives would be. Just by way of this being public comment, my public comment would be, without having a chance to understand or review that, but without having done that, I start off thinking more in lines of a representative one as a public comment. The other question I had was, maybe I looked through your summary and I looked through the report. If you could just outline for me how you see the town council and the voting public in dealing with the issues of financing, be it overrides, be it debt exclusion, capital programs, how you envision that working now under your system as opposed to what it is doing now.
Sure. I can do that, no problem. The very quick and easy answer is there's absolutely no effect on a Proposition 2.5 question, whether that be an override, a debt exclusion, or an underride. Proposition 2.5 is governed by Mass General Law, Chapter 59, Section 21C. And under that law, the question of a proposition over a Proposition 2.5 question always must be presented on the ballot and approved by voters, regardless of whatever form of government we have.
So does that come up through the council to the town manager, or is it just the town? Who initiates it? Does it get initiated by town council? Or?
Town council, yes, correct.
So town manager presents a capital budget. It's approved by town council to be put on a ballot, or is it going? I'm just wondering.
Yes. Yeah, so in our ideal scenario, the town manager and the town council work together on the proposed budget. If, there is a shortfall, a need, a special project, those parties would work together and, try and come up with what the best scenario is. But town council would be responsible for calling for the Proposition 2.5 question on a ballot to the public.
Okay, thank you. The other thing was really trying to get my hands around understanding the citizen participation portion. A couple of things. One, and maybe I'm reading it wrong, it looked like the town council's hearings are open to the public. However, the public can't really comment on things that are on the agenda without the town council approving them, participating, but they can bring up things that aren't on the agenda. Is that what you're looking to do?
Yes, so similar to any open public meeting, the hearing from the public is at the discretion of the chair of the particular meeting. I think we've put in there measures to allow for, I'm looking right now really quickly, measures to allow public participation within the meeting, within a regular meeting, and we've called for that on the agenda and within the charter, excuse me. And then if a member of the public wished to be heard on a specific item, meaning they'd like the town council to take that up, they could form a citizen or free petition.
Laura, go back for a second. I mean,
sure.
One of my concerns was, I thought I read that with respect at a regular meeting,
7-2.
7.2, provided for residents and voters to speak to matters not listed on the agenda. Comments with respect to pending agenda items have to be voted on by the town council. Is that reversed? I mean, typically you want to be able to let people comment on what you're talking about, don't you? I mean, if there's a budget issue coming up, and if there's a budget concern, when as a voter can I come in and ask a question and get clarification if it's not at one of these meetings when it's on the agenda?
Sure. Within the
initial petition for 250 people, you can't get 250 people at a town meeting now. So I'm also concerned about those numbers, but it seemed reverse to me that if there's an agenda item, I'm coming there because I'm concerned about that agenda. I think there should be more flexibility in being able to participate in raising issues at that, because other than that, there's no other time when you get input from anybody else or give information back to us. That's why the representative form of council, for me, made more sense, because those people could then talk to a smaller contingency of people and get something that was understood, as opposed to at a big meeting. But I'm really concerned in not being able to address an agenda item at some point before having to go to an initial petition or some other bigger way of confronting a question.
Sure. Okay. So let me just start with respect to the budget. Before the budget is passed, town council is required to hold a formal public hearing on that 14 days prior to the vote. And that you'll find within section 6-5A.
I don't have that in front of me. Okay. Because I was looking at the summary one, and they just said include a budget. It will include a budget message which explains the budget in narrative form, understandable by the general public. It didn't say that there was a public. It said they'll hold a hearing. Okay. Town council will then hold a hearing and will adopt a budget without amendments. Is that a public hearing? And again, is that something, again, you're holding a hearing?
6-5A is action on the budget, and the first clause A is notice and public hearing.
Okay, but then does the 7.2 limit what I can talk about?
No. If you're showing up at that public hearing, you can talk about the budget. Absolutely.
Well, it says at each regular meeting of the town council. So a special meeting for the budget doesn't...
It is a public hearing, no different than a public hearing that occurs by law right now. So similar to a planning board public hearing, that is when you can come and address that.
How often are regular meetings held by town council?
That is to be decided by the town council.
Okay.
We would hope that they would be held as frequently as select board meetings, but that is for them to decide.
One of the things that I was concerned in dealing with the town meetings that we've had was the inability of really people coming to anything to understand what was going on. They came really flat-footed without any information. It was my hope to see in this process that the town council would have more people who have more of an input with a person or representative to be able to let their views come up through a system. I'm just afraid that this system is really kind of closing off. Yes, okay, if you had a public hearing, but the rest of it to get information, you put some pretty heavy steps. I mean, a registration of 250 voters in this town for what we've shown to people showing up is kind of high.
That's for an initiative. That is something, 250 signatures is if you would like something to be passed.
Okay, but then you had 100 for something else.
For a citizen or free petition, which means you just get it on to require the town council to hold a public hearing on a matter. There is 7-1 citizen or free petition measures.
Do you have anything to bring it up other than a public hearing as an agenda item to raise things?
You are certainly, you have town council members, they are your representation. There's nothing stopping you from addressing them and asking to have an item be put on an agenda.
Okay, so you have to approach.
It
all
does
the
not
ones that are
necessarily
elected
have
at
to be
large.
part of
Okay. Going
the
back to that
charter. You can just simply reach out to your whichever town council representative you'd like.
Okay, and then you had the last thing was ineligible matters. So on an initiative or a referendum. So this is an initial. You eliminate any appropriation item, any capital improvement item, and any appropriations. So that's on an initiative petition or a referendum.
Correct. So some of them are precluded from being discussed by law. Some of them are just precluded from being discussed by the charter itself.
Okay. All right. I guess my comment of what you, thank you for your explanations. I appreciate it. But from what you've said, the two things that I think as a public comment, I'm concerned with the size required for both of those, and also again at the ability to address agenda items. I mean, if there's an agenda item, I think myself would be kind of strong to be able to present something. Certainly, the president can limit the time of that, can limit how it can be done. But if it's on an agenda, that's what brings people to a meeting.
I understand that, but I don't understand why you think you cannot discuss that.
Because it's
Yes, sorry, please.
Yeah, if I could just try to add a little to this.
Thank you.
Thank you. The idea of the council restricting the public speak part of its meeting to matters not on the agenda is essentially because council meetings can often get, I don't want to use a word as serious as hijack, but can take a turn based upon the public's comments with respect to something that the council is going to be acted on. Therefore, if the council chooses and the council says, yes, we have this big crowd here and we need these people's input in order to make a decision tonight, the council can certainly allow people to speak on matters on the agenda. But just like any other governing body, it gets to choose how its meetings run. And so that is why that language is there. It's not uncommon. It's like this in several other places. The idea is to allow the council to do its business if it so chooses to keep going. But it's the council's choice about whether to allow public speaking when it has to do with matters on the agenda. That's quite different than a public hearing. As the chairperson just said, a public hearing is intended for public input. And for that, although there can be reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions put on it, it is an opportunity for people to provide public comment to the particular deciding body, in this case the council, concerning matters that it will be taking up. So it is balanced in that the public has the right to come to meetings and provide input on things that may not be acted upon at that meeting. The council can allow comments if it wants to. And as the chair pointed out, with 100 signatures, the voters can guarantee a public hearing about a particular matter. Not just that it'll be on the agenda, but that there'll be a public hearing about it so that people will have the opportunity to provide input. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Does that help, Lauren?
Yeah, I still don't necessarily agree with that. I mean, I think given we're taking the public away from a lot of what they were involved with, and rightly so. They shouldn't have been involved with most of the stuff they got involved with. But if you're publishing an agenda, and there is an agenda, I'm coming there. I can listen to it on television. I want to come there. I want to participate, and I want to give you input, and especially some of the bigger items. Certainly, I think the council can control what that is. And if it's overly broad, they want to limit it to 10 minutes. They can say in advance, you have to present your questions. But you're saying an agenda, and you're creating this entity that's insulating itself from really public interplay. In terms of if there's an issue, and they're talking about it, I would like other people to hear my concern and not just be able to write a letter and only one person sees it. I think that takes away from the comfort level that I think the population might have in seeing this council, which has limited what they're doing. But certainly they're overseeing some of these bigger budget items and some of these other things or those decisions that they may have some input on that I'd like to see it doing. I just see the opposite of basically I'm allowed to bring up any matter that's not there. It's not under your control. So that's for me worse that I could say right now the way it's drafted, there's no limit. I don't have to get permission to bring up a matter that's not on the agenda. That doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, that's where you can get really derailed if I'm able to talk about something that's not on the agenda. And it doesn't call for a vote to be able to do that. That seems just contrary. So those are the comments I had. Thank you for listening to me. And again, thank you for your service.
Thank you, Warren. We appreciate your feedback.
Okay.
All right. Take care. Anybody else? I don't see any other members of the public in our room. So I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment section. Right now, what I would like to do, actually, I wanted to check with Lauren. Did you see my email from around 5 o'clock or so?
I did.
Okay. I just wanted to, I'm going to share my screen in a minute, but I wanted to give an update to some of the members. I think I had mentioned it to a couple of you. And in the course of reviewing, so I had given the charter to a couple of people outside of my sphere, just to have them read through it, make sure everything seemed reasonable and logical to me. In the course of that, I discovered that the draft that we had used in the last meeting and updated was not the latest version. There was only one material area that was different, and that was within 6, now I don't remember where it was, 3-8, 3-6. Give me a second. It was under recall, so it would have been Article 3 and 3-6B. It included a clause in there that stated that the recall had to be signed by at least 10% of the total number of persons registered to vote in Norton. And it also had a holdover from somebody else's wording that 50% of those people could not be from a single precinct, and we had decided not to use that and had removed it. So I just wanted to make folks aware. I went back to that version, updated it with Lauren's comments and updates and changes from our meeting on 9/21. So anybody who did happen to read it closely over the course of past couple of weeks, you would note that change. Otherwise, it was just some housekeeping issues. Anybody have any questions?
Lori, I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but did you also update the changes from 9/14? we had 2 meetings worth of changes that were since the public hearing.
Yes. I'm trying to think. Yes, I think the version from... I'm going to go back and double check that. So let's just say we're not going to vote on this tonight. I will go back and double check because I was not... I thought we were fine on 921. There were a couple of things in there that I saw that had already been amended. But for the sake of closing all of the loops, I will double check that, and I will let folks know. So based on this, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. In the course of sharing the charter with a couple of other people, so I had one question that it looked like had not been resolved, and share. Okay. Everybody can see. I'm going to move you folks around. So there was one question that I had initially raised back in July that actually never got issued. It's not material. It just had to do with a heading. So it was no big deal, but we should probably just get it resolved tonight. So I'm going to go through and hit all of the areas that we updated in the last, and then a couple of other people had questions that I thought were good discussion items for tonight, just to think about given certain situations right now. So the first question that I had that actually wasn't addressed back in July is for Lauren. The heading of section 2-3 mentions election, and this has to do with the council president and duties and vice president and filling of the vacancies. And I was wondering, since our town council president is not elected, should election be in that heading?
So that's a good question. We use the words here, the council president shall be chosen annually. I believe that if we were to kind of look through the general laws, that the general laws would suggest that the other councilors are electing that person as president. I don't think there's any harm in taking out that word election just to kind of avoid any misconception, however. And then ultimately I would point out that we're not supposed, those are supposed to be, all the headings are supposed to just be informational and useful for the voter. So useful for the reader. So yeah, I don't think there's a problem in removing it under the circumstances, although I do think that if we were really talking about how is this council president selected, he or she is going to be elected by their fellow councilors.
Okay.
Yeah, Laura, I would actually say leave it in because to me it's how they're chosen.
Okay.
Right. I mean that's what this heading is the council president, how they're it's instead of saying election, it's how they're chosen and through election by the other council members.
Okay. Anybody feel differently? I could go either way. Having heard from Lauren, I'm fine leaving it.
Oh, I'm fine leaving it.
I'm fine with it.
All right. I'm going to delete that comment. Okay. So this is in respect of legislative body exercise of power, and this is an amendment that was made in the last meeting that we had discussed. Town council cannot interfere with the town manager on any removal, employment, etc., and that excludes the town accountant. So I'm going to go ahead and accept that. This highlighted section I'm going to leave because there's something in between, but I'm going to come back to that in a minute. One of the people that I had asked to review the charter had actually raised the question. So this had to do with emergency measures, and it basically states that an emergency can be declared by 2/3 vote of the town councilors present, but in no event less than 4 councilors. The question was, given more recent events, are we still comfortable with that threshold? And I guess the question for Lauren is do we have the ability, is it set by law? Do we have the ability to reduce that? Or is there some wording that we should use, in a super emergency, it could be fewer?
I like that, a super emergency. I always talk about records access officers as the super RAO. So, okay. This is a policy decision for this committee and ultimately for the voters. The idea here is that you want people to agree that there is actually an emergency, and by saying no event less than 4, that means if only 4 people show up, everyone needs to agree. You could certainly make it a lower quantum of vote. Just again, I think the kind of bigger point here is that the emergency preamble allows an emergency measure to go forward without waiting, and without doing the time for referendum, etc. So the concept is it's essentially skipping the part of public input at that point. And it can be typically they can be they can be approved in one night. At the same meeting at which the measure is introduced. So we've said before, for the other measures, they come in, they get kind of a first reading. A counselor can use their what people call the charter privilege or charter right to delay the vote. But no matter what, then it would go to the first reading. It would probably go to a committee for review, and then it would come back for that second reading. If the council were to attach an emergency measure to vote it as an emergency, it would get voted on immediately. So the question, I guess, is, are there emergencies that may be more delicate, and so a smaller quantum of vote would be required, or we're saying 2/3 of those present, but in no event less than 4. So again, if you have a quorum there, that's 4. And 4 people, 4 members could vote to take action on any measure that's before the council.
So even in the event of a vote on an emergency measure, let's say the whole town's on fire, we still need a quorum to declare the emergency?
So, good follow-up. I think there's a difference between the whole town being on fire and what that means and a measure that's an emergency. So if the town's on fire, the responsibility will be the fire chief under the supervision of the town manager, and the town manager would make sure that the fire chief got all the things the fire chief needed, right? The council likely wouldn't be involved in that. However, let's say that we wanted to do a special appropriation to authorize a borrowing to pay for all the new fire equipment we need, et cetera, now that we've had this emergency with the whole town on fire. That we might want to do at one meeting in an emergency. So we might say this is an emergency measure approved by 2/3 vote of the council, and vote to authorize a borrowing at the same meeting. Declaring a state of emergency or something like that, typically in a town council form of government, the town manager will do so if necessary and then come to the council after for whatever other authorizations might be needed. Again, remember, legislative body versus executive.
Okay. Based on that, is everybody comfortable with what we have here?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I'm fine.
All right. I'm going to delete that. This is just language that we updated in the last meeting. It was in response, I believe, to the Attorney General's comments. So if I don't hear any objection, I'm going to go ahead and accept that. Okay. And this is a question for Lauren. So somebody had brought up, somebody I had shown this to, asked about this particular clause, specifically with regards to the part I'm highlighting here. The proposed bylaw appropriation order or loan authorization shall be posted to the town website at least 5 days before final passage in its entirety. The question that was asked was, is this too short of a length of time? And I went to direct them to the fact that the town council would be required to have at least 2 meetings on the matter before it got passed, which brought me up to the highlighted section. There appears to be a conflict, but I may be just misreading it. But up here it states that this was in 2-6A, measures and emergency measures, where it states a proposed bylaw, except emergency, shall be posted for no less than 14 days prior to the final passage on the town website.
Laura, this part that's highlighted at the top of page 4,
Yep.
It says, and in the manner required by the open meeting law for posting of meeting notices. So that can be posting on the website. It can be posted in a place that's available for review 24 hours a day. It's not required that it be the website. So the point that we were making down further was that no matter where it's posted under the open meeting law, it's going to be available on the town website for at least 5 days. That can be changed. I think the point of that was the proposed bylaw in the final form was going to be posted. So, any changes that might be made after that first hearing, et cetera, would be incorporated into that amended version, and that would get posted.
Okay, so it's not necessarily the town website that I have the issue with. It's the number of days that seems to be in conflict.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying there's a difference between posting for the open meeting law and posting on the website for this purpose. It's bylaw publication, so it's a little bit different than the other purpose. That being said, I think it could be 5 days, it could be 10 days, that's up to you. Could be the 14 days. But I don't think it's a conflict. It's saying no matter what, and appropriation or loan authorizations, those would never show up as bylaws because they're just orders. So again, I think the goal here is to make sure that at least 5 days before the council acts, people can go look at what it is and also look at where to get paper copies.
Okay.
But that being said, all the different variations of days is hard to keep track of, and maybe it is appropriate to kind of make them the same.
Align them.
Yeah, I believe right now you do post on the website, so I don't think there'd be an issue. But it's possible at some point that there would be a divergence in terms of how the meeting notices are posted, how this type of information is posted.
What do other people think about this?
So when we're posting for open meeting, are we posting the bylaw in its entirety, just like section 2.8 says? Or is it just we're giving notification that this bylaw is coming up and, see somewhere else for the actual text?
Right. That's so Carrie, I think what the first portion says is that any proposed bylaw, so now we're just talking about bylaws, shall be posted for no less than 14 days on the town website and in the manner required by the open meeting law for posting of meeting notices. So, the manner required by the open meeting law, it wouldn't require the full bylaw to be posted. But I mean, as I'm looking at this more, I just wonder whether even the fact that we're having this conversation means it's going to be hard to administer, and that therefore suggests that it would be the same 14 days, and we don't worry about it. You'll also note that the language in the, and I'm trying to either move my screen or your screen, Laura. It's very confusing.
Where do you want me to go down?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
No problem.
Seriously, I can't find. Okay. Yeah. So, this section does kind of repeat what that was saying up in the first section. Again, it's not talking about the open meeting law at all. It's saying the whole thing has to be available on the web. Also, it deals with appropriation orders or loan authorizations in addition to bylaws. It also requires that after final passage, they be posted and available upon request.
So is your opinion that there's some ambiguity and perhaps we should consider aligning them both to be the same number of days?
In my head, they both made sense, but that doesn't mean that, again, as I said, I think where we're having the conversation, perhaps it's more appropriate to post the, bylaws for the 14 days so that on the website here in the full amount, so that we don't have to worry about whether it's consistent.
Is 14 a reasonable number of days if we were to switch them both to, let's say, 10, noting that they're actual calendar days and not business days?
I think that's kind of a policy question. The 14 days would suggest to me that it's anticipated that the council might meet twice a month. And so the 14 days would allow the space between the meetings. But I think 10 days is a reasonable number of days as well. And especially if the council was talking about the substance of the document at the meeting, it would likely have been in their packets. And typically, except for executive session materials, those packets are also posted ahead of time. So I'm not worried about the public not having access to the document. I think whether it's 10 days or 14 days, it's a sufficient amount of time.
Okay. What are other people's thoughts on this?
I guess I was thinking just very simplistically that 14 seems almost too long, only because there's only 14 days between the meetings. So there's no time to get the paperwork ready for the next meeting.
Right.
Yeah, and I was thinking that the top of page 4, that section was just sort of a notice that the bylaw was going to be considered, and then the lower one, 2.8, was more specific, and the council is ready to pass it, not just consider it. And therefore, 5 days was good because they would know at the last meeting and they'd have time to sort of get it out there. I do think 14, unless we combine everything, and the 14 days that they're posting for open meeting is the full language of the bylaw, and then that counts towards 2.2-8. I just think it might be onerous to have them do 2 weeks in addition to the open meeting posting. We'd be slowing things down in my head.
Yeah.
So I guess my short answer is I think it's fine as is, but open to clarify.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I was going to basically say the same thing as Carrie. But I wouldn't want to change it to 14.
You wouldn't want to change 2.8 to 14?
No, I think the way it is right now is fine.
Okay. even though we recognize that the 14-day requirement would probably be heard on the next town council meeting if they're meeting every other week.
Can I bust in here for a second?
Please.
I would say, why don't we clarify that it's notice? Why don't we say notice of any proposed bylaw except an emergency measure shall be posted for no less than, and why don't we say, I think that 10 days probably makes sense. You could make this one 10 days. And so the idea would be that there'd be notice earlier under the open meeting law than would otherwise be required for people to pay attention. This is going to come up at our next meeting. And then the 5 days or whatever days you're comfortable with for the actual language. Again, I think the goal here is to make sure that people know what's going to be considered. And so giving them notice, in this section at the top of page 4 seems to then set the stage for the additional detail required by the 5 days. And it also is broader. That other one is broader and applies both to, I'm having a hard time flipping back and forth between screens, but it applies to both the bylaws addressed here, but also loan orders and loan authorizations. So that section, I think it's 2.8, is a little broader. That makes sense to me after listening to all of the discussion and the confusion. And I think if we're confused right now about what was intended, we can take some steps to eliminate that confusion for the council if the charter should be elected.
I like the idea of adding the word notice of any bylaw. Notice of any proposed bylaw.
I do as well. I'm also in favor of the reducing the number of days down to 10, just so that it's not tripping them up and they're having to put it off for a whole month.
That makes sense to me, Laura.
That works for me too.
Okay. Anybody feel strongly against that proposal? Okay. All right, so we're going to move on from there. This will resolve. This was discussed at our last meeting. And it further clarified how when people start their term who are elected other than town council. This was just a wording change that the Attorney General's office had recommended. So this is a change that was made in the last meeting, and as a result of somebody's comment from the public, and they had no issue with the First Amendment, but the second one, which further clarified it, they struck and wrote, "That's unnecessary. It says it right before it." So originally, it stated the remaining members of the multiple member body on which the vacancy exists shall recommend the council a proposed appointee which the council may approve or reject. We clarified it to state that it was specifically the multiple member body with the vacancy will make that recommendation, and I'm willing to take guidance from the other members if they feel that the second proposed appointee that is now currently struck is superfluous or unnecessary.
I think we purposely added that to make it clear, so I would leave the language the way we had it.
Okay.
And Laura, just my 2 cents for what it's worth is that I typically like to, after the word which, when it's comes after a comma, I like to add what it is we're talking about, so that there's no confusion. But that's why it made sense to me with it there. So.
Got it. All right, we're going to leave it. Moving on. This was something discussed in the last meeting. We added just in the heading filling the vacancies and went on to further clarify the manner in which those vacancies will be filled. Did anybody have any issues with that? Nope. Hang on. Sandy, I've got Denise texting me asking to be let back in, but I don't see her in the list.
I just let her in.
Okay.
I'm back.
Thank you. Sorry, my phone's buzzing. People are calling. It's a whole mess over here. If nobody has any issues with these changes from the last meeting, I'm just going to go ahead and accept them. Okay. This was further clarification that was discussed last week with regards to the town manager's duties.
Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
When I was reading this through, I was thinking of the Attorney General's comments, and I think we should add after the word council clerk, comma, if any. Because,
got it. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody have any other issues or comments with this? I'll go ahead and accept it. Come on. I'll get that later. Okay, so this has to do with the role of the town manager. And it said town manager shall also prepare and update a long-range plan every 5 years. Question was asked, should that be updated periodically? Their thought was annually. When I view this one, when I think of long-range, I'm thinking 20 years, in which case my opinion was 5 years is probably adequate for review. But since somebody else brought it up as a question, I thought I would raise it.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So if you look in H, it says at the beginning, as well as a proposed capital outlay program for the 5 fiscal years next ensuing. So every year, the manager will be updating a 5-year kind of plan. The update for the long-range plan is a little bit different. And so, 5 years is a reasonable amount of time. You take stock of what you did in 5 years, you look 5 more years out. I don't think that, I don't think it's inconsistent. And, it could say every 10 years if we wanted it to, or sooner as deemed appropriate or something like that.
Everybody's happy with it as is?
Yeah, 5 years is fine. It's really hard to plan even 5 years. I mean, everything changes so much that 5 years I think is fine.
Okay. Everybody else is good?
Yeah, and Laura, just one more quick thing on that. It just says that the manager is going to prepare it or update it every 5 years. So it could be a 20-year plan. I don't think it's a limit on the number of years out it can be. It's just a limit on how often it's updated. Review. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Everybody's happy here?
Yes.
Okay. All right. This is just a correction to wording. Under the citizen or free petition measure, so town clerk shall provide notice to the lead petitioner by email or first-class mail at least 48 weekday hours prior to the hearing. Somebody just wondered if that was a sufficient amount of time, or an adequate amount of time, or a fair amount of time.
Without deciding or weighing in on whether it's fair or sufficient, I will say it's modeled after the notice required to be provided to individuals who will be discussed in executive session. So 48 weekday hours means you can't give the notice on Friday. The meeting's going to be on Monday. I don't think there's anything, it says at least, I don't think there's anything that mandates that the person wait, but certainly that the clerk wait, to provide the notice, but certainly, it at least is in accord with the rights of individuals under the open meeting law.
Okay. Anybody have an issue with 48 weekday hours? I'll resolve that. Again, just a wordsmithing. This was something that we added in response to a clarification that was asked for with regards to the Charter Review Committee, and they just wanted to make sure that the registered voters were not employees or officials because they were already adequately represented. And the English teacher, or the former English teacher I asked to review this was fighting me tooth and nail on this one, and thought it was unwieldy and we should consider breaking this whole thing. That's a single sentence, what I have highlighted on the screen right now. And they had provided for a breakup into two separate sentences. I could go either way. It is a little unwieldy. Open to thoughts from town council and other members.
I don't see a downside. It still makes the point, and I think that's really the reason that it's there. So I think it's a question of just what the commission feels more comfortable with. But I think either way, it says the same thing, and we don't have to be concerned it changes the substance.
Okay. I don't feel strongly either way.
I'd be in favor of 2 sentences.
Yeah, when I realized it actually was one giant sentence, I was like, yeah, I could see that point, but in reading it, I didn't pick up on it the first, 73 times I read it, so.
I don't know. My personal opinion, I totally agree. It reads the same either way. But just for someone who's not used to reading these kind of documents to read it, I think 2 sentences is a little easier.
Anybody feel strongly in the other direction? All right, I'll go ahead and accept those. Maybe.
Plus, you never argue with an English teacher.
No, they're a pain in the neck. That's it. Delete comment. Okay, I need to verify that we have all of the changes that we discussed. I got to go back and look and see what we did in 914. I'm pretty sure they're here, but I'm not 100% confident that I think we want to vote on this tonight. Also, Kevin is not here, so and there's no real need to vote on it this evening. So for the sake of making sure it is absolutely correct, let's just hold off on voting on the final version of this until next week. I will send it, once I've reviewed it, I will send around what I believe to be the final version, and we'll take a vote on it next week if that works for everybody. All right. All right, I'm going to stop sharing this one. And let's move on to the final report. And I am going to, I know David had, hang on, I just want to get into my email. David had sent through a couple of comments. I just wanted to open that up. I am certain not everybody has had a chance to review what I just sent around today, and that is my fault, and I apologize. Carrie did have it to me prior to this weekend, and I am slacker, so my apologies. So I will open it up. Sorry, one second. I will open it up for any discussion or comments that anybody, questions that anybody has this evening, and then David, I'll grab yours, or David, if you want to chime in with what your thoughts were on the final report, I'm fine with that as well.
So Laura, I haven't had a whole lot of time to look at it, but I did look at it briefly.
Yep.
I have some smaller changes that I was going to send you when I have a chance. But I had a bigger sort of question about, I guess, the piece that to me felt like it was missing was that we talked about the issues and the concerns. We talked about the changes. I didn't see those merged together. That the changes that we were proposing, how they address the concerns that we heard.
Okay.
I feel like the concerns almost should come first, and then the changes with some reference back to the concerns and how this addresses them. To me, it seemed like two separate things when I was reading it.
Okay. I forget in what order. Yeah,
I did change the order of the concerns and the highlights because I thought people are most going to want to see immediately what are the highlights. So I wanted to just put them out there, but you can move that around. But that is one just slight change that I made from the preliminary report.
Yeah, I guess I just felt like from the preliminary to now, we kind of avoided the preliminary justifying our decisions because we didn't really want to get into all that. But I feel like this is the place more to get into the justification of why we chose the town council. I think we got into a little bit of the at large, although I feel like the bigger one of giving all residents the opportunity to vote for all councilors was missing from that argument in terms of why we chose at large. But again, I just didn't see a lot of the justification, which I felt like was to me the big difference between the preliminary and the final is that we're trying to sell it now.
Okay. That's a fair point. To be honest, I did not even, didn't realize the order had been switched. The contents were all still there. I just didn't realize the order in which they had originally appeared. Anybody else have a chance to read through it and have comments?
Yeah, I was just going to say that's why I did not have a chance to read it. Harry, could you just give us a quick, 90-second summary, or even was there track changes from the original to now?
Anybody else having trouble hearing Dave Heaney?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, good. Somebody just texted. Yeah, Dave, you sounded like you were in the other room talking.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, much better. Thank you.
All right. I thought I could work off my laptop itself. I was wondering why Carrie was giving me such a funny look as I was asking the question. I thought it might have been a question of some sort, but so I was just saying I am part of the group that did not have a chance to read this in detail. But as we're going through here, Carrie, would you mind just giving like a 90-second summary of the changes that you made from A to B? Is there anything in particular that we should really be focusing on, or should we all, and obviously we all will go read it in detail, but is there anything in particular you want to call our attention to?
Sure. So let me put up on my own screen. So I did start with the preliminary because we all seem to like that. I did not provide as much justification as I think Sandy's looking for. I did put in some explanations for to address some of the questions that came up in the public hearing. So under changing the form of government, I addressed the at-large versus precinct issue and provided what I thought was the justification for the at-large. So if other people have additions they want to put in, please just let me know. I did change the order. So again, I put the highlights of the changes first and then got to the core concerns. We went into more of the charter change process in this to sort of explain what it is we could do and what we can't do. And in that, we called out the effect of the new charter on Prop 2.5, since that seemed to be a concern of multiple people. And just wanted to really clearly identify that this charter does not change that process. So it's its own section now, just before the core concerns. And then the next steps changed, obviously, because we wanted to clarify that, this is going out. So we're gonna finalize this fall, but we're going to be sending this out to voters, sometime next spring. So to really make sure that they know that they need to vote on this in April of that year. So
Got it.
I think those are the main changes.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
There's a couple of places, there were a couple of places that were highlighted with X's and Y's, and yes, those are going to be filled in. Actually, that reminds me, I have to find my notebook.
And on my version, I've incorporated David Wren's technical changes. There are a couple of wording issues that hadn't been resolved, so I've redlined those on my copy.
Yeah, great. Mine were very technical. They were just kind of very minor.
Did you say you also had a substantive question or suggestion?
I did. I was kind of see if it was kind of came up, or I think it kind of ties in with what Sandy was saying.
Yeah.
It was under the transition to the housing authority from elected to appointed. I guess I was thinking that we should speak a little bit more about like why we're making the change, or why we feel it's important to make the change. So I was thinking about the importance of the committee itself, as well as the lack of any competitive races in a number of years, and why the council felt it was important to change to a appointed role to get more qualified candidates' interest. I read it the first time. I felt like it was kind of like, town council suggests we do it like that. That's how most towns do it, which is all good stuff. But I didn't think we maybe explained enough of like why we wanted as a council to make that change.
I am noting that down.
Okay.
I could come up with some language, but that was my only comment. Like I said, I think it's kind of I just think we should talk a little bit more about it.
Sure.
Thought process.
Chair?
Yes, please.
Thanks. So I wanted to just remind you guys that the special thing about this report is that you get to mail it to the town gets to mail it to the home of every registered voter. The commission has the ability to post an FAQ, on its page or on the web page of the town that explains other things or more things. So if you find that you don't want this to get too bogged down, and I'm not suggesting that making the type of changes that you are talking about would do that, but if you don't want it to be too much and you want people to be able to look at it and kind of point to the different things that the commission thought was important, just remember this isn't your only opportunity to talk to voters. You have the ability to prepare an FAQ and to make it available. You just won't be able to mail it to people. Of course, an outside group like a ballot question committee could register with the town clerk, and then it could circulate any of the materials that the commission has prepared at its expense, not at the town's expense. So I think there's probably a nice fine line in there between too much and what you guys are suggesting maybe too little. So I think there, as I said, I think there's probably a balance. And so when you're looking at it, I think you do want to look at it for, is it readable? Is it understandable? Does it get to the point? And, with the additional kind of information about why the choice is made, even if it's a bullet point or just a couple sentences. But I mean, I did have a chance to read through it, and I thought it did a great job. The one issue that I saw was, there's two actually. One is in the transition from housing authority. In that last bullet, it says the commission recommends each multiple member body consider its needs and decide if alternate positions would help ensure or improve its effective operation. They're not allowed to implement that on their own. So remember, they would need to seek a special act amending the charter to do that. Okay, unless there's something in state law that says that they can have additional alternates. And then the one other thing was, I thought the core concerns should come before 2.5. I think 2.5 is important, and I think it's important that you point it out. But I do think that in trying to kind of build that bridge between where you are and where you're going, that's the core concerns. It's more useful, I think, for voters to see the core concerns first and then kind of see, how you guys got to where you are. That's my
Thank you.
Great job.
I had a question. I think that I don't think the recommendation was to have more alternates. I think the recommendation was to clarify the role of an alternate. That was what we had said we wanted to include in the final draft. So it wasn't so much who can have one and whether they can have one or not, but it was more that we felt like there was no guidance to committees that have an alternate member and what that looks like.
All right. That's not what I read in the minutes. I can certainly go back and talk with
Like I said, I have handwritten comments in here, but they're kind of a mess right now, so I can certainly type them up and put something together and send it to you to see.
I may have misunderstood Laura's notes on that. So
yeah, and I think I pulled mine out of directly from the meeting minutes, like verbatim. So, I do remember talking about the charter not addressing alternates and us having the question of, well, how will the boards and committees know that they even have them available to be able to adopt? That was my recollection of the discussion, but I could be wrong going back.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I do remember that same conversation. I think both issues did come up. But I'm wondering whether, how you guys, with your next steps, you had talked about that you might want to make some recommendations for further study, essentially, or for further analysis or thought by the town. So maybe if when you're going through the minutes, you pull a few of those together, you'd move that anyway, And perhaps it could be something like review existence and role of alternates, something like that, to consider or evaluate or something like that. Maybe that moves along with those other couple of things, and I just can't remember them offhand, but I know that a few times you guys had said, maybe we put that in as a recommendation to the, kind of to the council, to what's coming up, if it was approved, about things that you thought were important, but that weren't addressed here.
Like that idea.
We could even add like a section that's just recommendations that we did not include. I think we have it sort of sprinkled in through the highlights right now, but if we want to come up with like a bulleted list of, these are the things we recommend you think about in the future, we could do that. That's appealing.
Yeah, even the, I had just written down, literally in quotes, further thoughts. And maybe that does fall within the next steps, or its own standalone section. But yeah, I don't dislike the idea at all. Did anybody else have a chance to look at it and have comments now? Okay. All right. With that, if I could ask people to read through it and send their comments to both Carrie and myself. We'll work on getting a second draft around to folks, definitely earlier than this one was. And let's have a discussion in the next meeting and see if we can come up with a final draft version. If Lauren just has 1 second, I do have an admin question. And looking at the timeline of things that we need to do, one of them is an accounting to the town clerk is due within 30 days of submitting our final report. Is it safe to assume that if we were not provided a budget as called for in one of the earlier sections, there is no accounting due?
I agree with you that that's definitely an admin issue. I think that you have any of the charges that were incurred as a result of my work they're reported separately to the town, so you could file that with the clerk, and if there was any other expenses that you guys paid, you could do that. But I think that's more of directory rather than mandatory type of requirement.
Okay. Yeah, we were not out of pocket. Well, I take that back. Sandy may actually be out of pocket for one of the things that the printing of the final report. I think otherwise the town was billed directly. So I just wanted to make sure that there was not some specific form we needed to fill out and hand in.
No specific form. I think, knowing that you guys have really worked hard to meet all the deadlines and cross all your T's and dot your I's, I think perhaps just an email to the clerk or a letter emailed to the clerk just saying, we're required by the statute to provide you with an accounting. Our legal expenses have been billed directly to the town in a separate matter, and then anything else that you need to address. Just, again, that way you've done all the things that the law says, even though, again, I don't think that there's any kind of problem with not doing it, but I think it makes sense under the circumstances.
Okay, great. Thank you. Does anybody else have anything they want to discuss this evening? Okay, our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, October 19th. And if there's nothing further, I will take a motion to adjourn for this evening. Nobody wants to go?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Can I have a second? I'll
Second.
stay on here all night. I don't mind.
Second.
Thank you. Okay. Sandy,
Yes.
Dave,
Yep.
Heaney, David
Yes.
Wren,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Janie,
Yes.
Denise.
Yes.
Thank you. Keith,
Yes,
I am also a yes. I hit everybody, right?
yes.
Thank you. All right. We are adjourned for this evening.